Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman, and this is Dissident Dispatch for October 23rd, 2023. I am very lucky today. Kelly Schenkoske is in the house with us. She will be presenting us with information about liberated or liberation ethnic studies. And the reason I asked her to come here tonight in particular is that I was sent some information by some of my parents in New Jersey that the teachers in their district, Cherry Hill, you've heard me refer to Cherry Hill, New Jersey a lot on this channel, were encouraged, and that's an understatement, to attend a webinar over the weekend. And in fact, the school district paid for them to attend about this very subject. I happen to have some audio recording from that webinar, as well as some images from screens. I can't show you more than that because I can't give away my source, and that might do it. So what I did was I got in touch with Kelly. I said, I need to know more about what happened in California with your district, with what happened out in the state, because ethnic studies became mandatory out there. And I know it's bad. And I even know to a certain degree why, but I don't really understand fully how, like, the process, how it came to be mandated in the state. And then what are the mechanisms by which it's spreading and who are the key players? So I asked her to come and explain that to us, and she is here to do that today. And so I am so grateful. Before we do get started, I bring Kelly in, please like, share, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel to be notified when I make more content like this. And go get other people to come listen. I cannot stress this enough. This is a topic parents need to understand, especially in light of everything we've seen in the last couple of weeks with these protests, kids on campus appearing to defend Hamas, or at a minimum, not condemn them, which is pretty much the same thing. So, there's a reason for that, and it is ethnic studies. So let me, please join me in welcoming Kelly Schenkoske. Hey, hi,
Thanks
how
for
are
having
you?
me, Deb. How are you?
Thanks for coming. It's not about me having you. You're the expert here. I'm kind of just providing the screen. We need you. So where do we begin? I think, explain to us, before we even get into like the nitty gritty of what it is, just kind of high level, what does it purport to be? What do they claim that it is?
That's a great question, because it's advertised to the public as a means of educating students about history, history of people from different ethnicities and different backgrounds. A lot of times here in California, we're hearing that ethnic studies is a way for students to learn about their own history, their own ancestry, and what has happened with their people over time. And so a lot of people perceive that it's this wonderful program, and that ethnic studies allows a window into cultural understanding, history, all of the different faith beliefs. And it's perceived as this wonderful model that allows people to really look into all different cultures. It's kind of taught, or at least advertised, I would say advertised, marketed heavily as that message. But the product is nothing like that.
Does it include European? Does it include the culture that was dominant in the United States for the majority of our history, Western European?
Actually, that is, it's very Eurocentric in the sense of, the curriculum that I had done a public records request for and obtained the materials of. I mean, we're talking about there was a slide referencing Karl Marx. There were documents deriving from Antonio Gramsci, who was an Italian Marxist. And in all, I kept seeing, okay, this is another European, Eurocentric, uh, historical person that is being woven into this. And that was a lot of the material in the source documents is going back to those ideas and those thoughts as they are today being translated through different ethnic groups.
Would those be considered, though, European culture or Marxian internationalist ideas, globalist ideas that just happen to have been produced by European people? I guess when I asked the question, I was thinking, like, do we hear that, for example, people of Irish or Swedish or German or French or, Italian, like people, regular people, because Americans all came from somewhere, English, Irish, right? We all came from somewhere. And even though most of us consider ourselves Americans at this point, if you've got Americans saying, I'm Chicano or I'm Hispanic or I'm El Salvadorian or I'm, whatever, even though they were born here, or even maybe their parents were born here, and that's considered ethnic. My question was, does ethnic studies include people who say, I'm Irish American or I'm Italian American or I'm Russian American? I mean, does it include that?
It's actually a completely different curriculum. I mean, completely different. I did not
Okay.
ever expect it to be what it was when I first viewed the material. I remember asking a friend, you know, I saw in the source documents this author, Frantz Fanon, Frantz, and then Fanon. And the book is called Wretched of the Earth. And I'm thinking, who is this person? What is this book about? And then I do remember in the source documents seeing in also Michel Foucault, which I may not be doing justice to the pronunciation of his name, but that was also included. And again and again and again, not seeing the marketing was definitely a bait and switch, because what you actually get is this, I would call it race Marxism. And
So
also,
what
yeah.
so there's the material, what you're calling marketing is a material, let's say, that the parents might see or the schools are seeing or putting out or whatever. But the source material is what you looked at in terms of what the curriculum was referencing for
Well,
its
I would
lessons.
say actually the curriculum itself is quite intense. The source documents as well, the slides, all of the teacher training slides and materials, those were every part of it, including the student curriculum, was eye-opening. However, the messaging out in the public and the messaging at different school board meetings and overall the messages that we hear from the different activist groups that have gone forward to demand or call for ethnic studies in the K through 12 sector are these messages that it is about this cultural awareness and cultural teaching. But there's very little to be provided in the sense of actual specifically learning about different people's cultures and religious beliefs and all of those things. So
Interesting.
to answer your question about, different honoring the ethnicity and the heritage of all different backgrounds, that's not something I saw.
Okay. So in terms of those ideas that you were
Mhm.
seeing, and you said they were kind of intense, and you said there were ideas that didn't really have to do with, oh, people, some people's cultures eat these foods and they have this religion. And when we think of ethnic studies, I think to the average layperson, they might think, okay, like you said, so the kids are going to learn about different
Mhm.
kinds of people who have different beliefs, and what's wrong with that. I mean, we live in America, it's a quilt, right? We're a melting pot and so forth. So what would be wrong with that? Especially in a state like California, where you have so many different ethnic people of ethnic origins, and so many different ethnic origins, that you would imagine even most parents would probably think this is a good idea that my children are going to know more about where these people come from, just as a matter of interest and respect, right? Just so forth.
Mhm.
But what were the ideas that are in there?
Yeah, so I will say, just to get this out of the way, because I know it's been a discussion across the country, is that this idea about critical race theory not being in schools. I do remember after the first school board meeting I'd attended with some members of the public, community members, parents, that someone representing the school district denied that critical race theory was taught. So I began just searching online to see if there was any kind of information, whether it was school board docs or any articles that said anything to the contrary. And so I found an article from KQED, where at the time a representative from the school district did admit to the media that they were incorporating a ethnic studies course with critical race theory. And critical race theory was found throughout the material that I was able to obtain through my attorney's public records. And not only that, but the students are taught very specifically. There is this one page that has 29 different social identities, and it lists the social identity, and then it lists the oppressor, and then the oppressed, and then it lists the different forms of discrimination, and then it talks about methods of resistance and solutions. Basically, this whole table to illustrate these are the identities we're telling you exist. These are the things that those identities may or may not be doing wrong. And then these are who they're oppressing, and also these are the forms of resistance and ways that you fight back. And then students are specifically taught instruction in these forms of resistance. They're taught, in addition to that, not just how to create a narrative for activism that they are in support of, but also how to build a counter narrative if you're somewhere and somebody is saying something that you disagree with, how to build that counter narrative and challenge it back.
So would it be okay to show the visual aid of what you're talking about? Because
Of course.
you've sent me the Salinas. I'm going to go back and then I'll scroll to it. But you sent me the Salinas Union High School District Introduction to Ethnic Studies. And
Great.
I want to show that because I think that will really help people visualize what you're saying. Okay, so this is the packet, right? This is the actual
This is,
introduction.
yeah, received in 2021. This is the student curriculum. And the significance is that there were some school districts in California that were chosen to pilot ethnic studies around the time of 2017 and 18. This is one such district that was selected to pilot. They also, prior to the state passing and mandating ethnic studies as a graduation requirement, this school district passed that prior to that mandate. So the actual mandate that was signed into law does not go into effect until the 2025-2026 school year.
Okay, so but it has been passed.
Yes.
So this is now the law. So the kids there now may not have to deal with it, but other kids will. And I believe what you were describing is this, correct?
That's one of the many. There are several mandalas, but that one's significant to look at because as you can see, it's talking about all these social identities that exist. And in addition to that, it's talking about intersectional power and social justice. So you can see, I believe there's about 9 layers. You've got the who are we, but then you have the first layer of the mandala, and then the second, and then the third and the fourth are the text. And then you've got third and fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. Yeah, there's a total of 9 layers. And you can see on the top right, it says theocide, capitalism, and all kinds of different phrases, the military and prison industrial complexes, coloniality, patriarchy, heteropatriarchy, white supremacy, genocide, all of these different phrases.
Um, my my reaction to this, aside from being absolutely horrified that children would be taught to see other human beings in this way, um, is that this is just chock full of contradictions that are sort of nakedly obvious. I mean, what are teachers saying about it? So have there been people on the inside of school districts who have taken a look at this curriculum and said, I'm not teaching that. That's crazy. I'm not teaching this. I'm not going to present these ideas to children. I don't agree with these ideas. This is whatever you call it. This is Marxism. This is, this is crazy. This is racial essentialism, whatever you want to call it. This is not what we want to be teaching. Have there been teachers who have spoken up against this?
I would like to say yes, there have been. There are not a lot, but there have been teachers that have spoken about this, but there are unfortunately still quite a lot widely embracing this. Personally, I think that the influences in life can have an impact on a person, even as an adult. And the continual messaging and promotion of certain ideas can certainly have an impact on children as well. And so there have been definitely people speaking up about this, and still there needs to be more.
Right.
But yeah.
Other things that jump out at me, Kelly, are I see this hybridities. Apparently,
Mhm.
this is a new word that means that you're a hybrid of different identities. Borderlands and passing may apply. So, and somebody said in the comments, and I really find this to be an astute observation. Marshmallow Minion says, "How does a philosophy that sees power dynamics everywhere and calls them out, how does it not recognize this as much of the same?" And the hubris of not only dividing other people, all other people,
Mhm.
into these categories that are primarily based on things beyond their control. And then saying, passing may apply. Like, we've also decided that you not only don't get to decide, but there are other things that you can't even see in our chart that may apply. And down here, and haven't we heard recently too, that when parents, and you're going to speak to that, I know more about the parent pushback, but when parents have said, I don't want my child to be taught that they're either oppressed or oppressor. I don't want these messages. And states have started passing legislation that do speak to those feelings. And I have mixed feelings about legislation that is based on what children should or shouldn't feel as a result of a lesson. I think we should be down to brass tacks of children shouldn't be taught things that aren't true. We just shouldn't be
Mhm.
teaching lies to kids, but whether it makes them feel good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, there might be kids who feel very, very bad learning about the Holocaust, but I want them to learn it, or
Mhm.
slavery for that matter. But here it said that we're told they're not doing that, that the reason the people who put out ethnic studies oppose the parental rights movement and the push for these laws is we're not doing that. We're not teaching children that, they're oppressors. We're not telling kids that they need to feel bad. What is a child supposed to feel? In which ways are you privileged and oppressed? What are you doing about it? So now there's also an obligation, and it's not about oppression Olympics. It's about solidarity, transformational resistance, and love. So
And
they're still
well, yeah.
putting the pressure on the student.
Right, and I was gonna say in that area on the left that you just read is an aspect of infusing critical consciousness. This idea of that awareness, of understanding it, and then deciding what you're gonna do about it and how you're gonna live every day according to that structure.
Right. So what else should we look at in here before talking about how this came to be, the mechanisms, the people? Is there anything else within the curriculum that you think is important for us to
Oh,
see, to
yeah.
understand?
I think if we scroll back closer to the front,
Okay. So I'm
if we
gonna go
just
back.
scroll up,
This
let's
might help,
see.
and scrolling the small one doesn't hurt people's eyes quite as much.
Yeah, let's see here. This one, wait, right underneath where it says ethnic studies, that this is actually giving you the 7 different principles of part of ethnic studies. And you'll see there it says holistic humanization at the top and critical consciousness. There's that word we just mentioned. Um, and then it talks about building actualization, cultural perpetuity, self worth, self determination, and holistic well being. We're hearing a lot of holism, holistic well being as well. So that's all incorporated here. Um, it just, this kind of gives the structure, the outline. At number 4, it's talking about white supremacy, which is pretty common theme in ethnic studies. And then also up above, unless there was anything you wanted to see specifically on this
Well,
page.
I did
Yeah.
want to comment on, because you mentioned it. This says the values rooted in humanization and critical consciousness. So we're back to that again, and shape the following guiding principles of ethnic studies teaching and learning. So for those who aren't familiar, critical consciousness is part of critical theory, of which critical race theory is a part. So people telling you we don't do that, they demonstrably are doing it. And what they're essentially telling the kids is that they're asleep. That's where the term woke comes from, that they're kind of like not really aware of what their reality is. The reality they think they know, what they perceive with their 5 senses, doesn't tell the whole story, and that the purpose of the school is to awaken them to be critically conscious of all these unseen, unspoken, things. It's a kind of a Gnosticism, this gnosis, this knowledge that only the educators have, they're going to give to the children, and sort of awaken them to this. And because it's not anything tangible you can hold on to, measure, point to, you're never done. You've never found it. You've never actually become fully critically conscious until you're in full-blown revolution. And even then, you've got to keep going. There's always more that you have to be conscious of. And the other thing I wanted to comment on was this challenge here. See the bullhorn? This is telling you, in my opinion, what they're telling the children. It's not enough to learn these things. It's not enough to be critically conscious of your roles and identities and all these different uh, concepts. But what are you going to do about it? Remember, for the other slide, what are you going to do? So challenge. And you're supposed to challenge imperialist, colonial, hegemonic beliefs and practices on ideological, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized levels. This is basically saying tear down your world. So
Mhm.
whether it's your parents, the others in your school teachers, your university, the political landscape, at your job, with your friends, every place you are, every interaction you have, challenge what they're calling imperialist, colonial, hegemonic beliefs. No one is telling the kids this is an opinion. No one is telling the kids this is by no means some kind of scientific fact that these things are true. And in many cases, what they call imperialist, colonialist, hegemonic beliefs simply aren't. They're labeling things this to make them bad, because they just want to make everything they want you to tear apart bad, so that you'll go out and tear it apart. And
Mhm.
that's what I'm seeing is like, you're not really aware that everything around you is bad, including parts of you and parts of the people that you see and so forth. And in order to be properly conscious, you need to go out and tear it all down.
And that's what I think, speaking of their ideas of solution, I think that is on a page just slightly closer to the front, if I'm remembering correctly. Mm. Those are the chants to the Aztec gods that
Hence to the Aztec gods.
should be removed from the curriculum by now. That's another type of mandala. You know what? It is further down. I apologize.
No, that's okay. There's so many pages.
Okay, here we are. This
Okay.
last page right there, 42.
Oh boy, there it is.
Of great
Do you,
concern to me is when we look at that center column. Um, these are ideas that are being proposed. Um, it also says counter hegemony, counter genocide, protest movements and revolutions, community cultural wealth, community organizing, civil rights. It's not that we're not saying that civil rights is wrong or that peace on here is wrong. It's actually that counter genocide word is very concerning. Transformational resistance. These are things that the students are taught in class, that these are the focus of various assignments. You'll see towards the bottom of that middle paragraph, it talks about liberation, which has a meaning for them, a political meaning, freedom, which has a political meaning. And then on the next one, it talks about queering, conscious hip hop and creative art forms, critical race theorizing is right there. This is all.
multiple subjectives.
Mhm.
My truth, your truth.
And the interesting thing too, I mean, it talks about cycles of critical praxis right there, critical solidarities. In the source documents, it's not just critical race theory, but also a theory called lat crit theory, and then also queer theory. So it's not just critical race theory that is being drawn into the curriculum from source documents.
Here it is, critical consciousness, standing against dehumanization, identifying origins of knowledge, critiquing the master narrative, that's basically critiquing truth, and claims of objectivity, neutrality, including colorblindness, and highlighting marginalized worldviews. So even though, what they call marginalized is just defeated. And I hate to sound judgy, but defeated. Like the Aztecs were defeated by reality, by history, by other people, by discovery, all kinds of things. But they consider that to be marginalized. And I think that's a really, right, Kelly, that's a really important distinction, is that as they're on one hand, they'll call themselves progressives and that humankind is constantly getting better, but they reject that. They actually reject that reality and claim that the only reason that some humans have ended up, being dominant, or some cultures have ended up being dominant in certain regions of the world, or even in this country, was, oppression, marginalization. By their logic, the Aztecs would still be in power if not for the Europeans that came. In the Native Americans would still be flourishing, possibly even, like whatever. America would be so much better if not for the Europeans. And the students who are going to be presented with this material will never be presented with an alternative viewpoint. Isn't that correct? It's not like they're going to get this ethnic studies curriculum and a traditional Western classical education that says, you know what, the Greeks defeated people, and then the Persians defeated them, and then the Romans defeated them, and then they're not even going to hear about it.
Right. And I mean, I've talked with parents whose students have gone through this course, and a lot of students are not wanting to take the course because they're at ninth grade able to recognize the political proselytization that is occurring in the class. And a lot of these kids actually want to get better at math instead of being politicized in the classroom, is what I've heard. And then one of the things I do want to point out, this is kind of going a little deeper, but for anybody in the audience that's listening and wants to look into this further, at the top it says we are holistic human beings and communities, et cetera, intellectual, emotional, physical, spiritual, relational. I do want to say that I just want to make a note of this for the audience. Oftentimes in social emotional learning programs, we see an emphasis on different circle gatherings. They also do this in the ethnic studies class. They do these various gatherings in circles. And then also want to just point out, below it says D, intersectional, multidimensional, community, cultural, wealth-based. But then G, ecological. So ecological, and the reason that's significant, and many people might bypass that, is that there is, under what is called GCED, Global Citizenship Education, and among global ideas being promoted and permeated throughout education, is this focus of ecological over ego. And it is this idea of promoting the idea of a whole new form of not just a new economy, but a new everything. It is a transformation of society. So whereas a parent might see that word ecological and may not understand necessarily why that is significant, ecological is also being utilized as a means to push ideas. For example, one idea being degrowth. Another idea is called donut economics. And people at a global level are discussing this within the realm of, and I'm sorry to go off on a tangent, but it's just
No.
something I want to notate, because there are groups, tied to pushing UN Sustainable Development Goals, which, by the way, they are being taught in my county and in other counties in California, these 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But there's also this Global Wellbeing Project, which has various connections to it on its own. And in the midst of that, there's this push for eco over ego. So when you see ecological, that is also a means to transform all kinds of things. Transform, and this fits into the global ideas of, I would say also, like, to get to net zero and transform literally everything in our lives to align with sustainability, as they would call it. And it's an idea that we have to live according to, based on climate change and all of these things. So ecological is a big change, and it is already some of these ideas permeated to transform our healthcare system as well into, so that, anyways, it looks
No,
like
but
one little thing on a page, but yeah.
No, it's very important. And Sao Sophia says a way to remember it. The root of eco literally means home. So remember, when you see that, they want to transform home, as you said, really everything, even not
Absolutely.
just the physical space in which we live. They'd like it to be a little shoebox, so it, in a tall building where we can't get out if they want to lock us in and all that. But I, also 15-minute cities, also who we consider to be home.
And
So
that is so important, because I know there might be people listening that goes, 15-minute cities, that's just, an idea from somebody in another country or something else.
is
But
it
in
though?
reality, there's already, these big conferences that a lot of our elected officials are attending with regards to that. And not only that, but within the realm of community schools, which are something that, I've been kind of shouting from the rooftop for a while. Community schools are often discussed under a descriptor of what is not just socialism, but communitarian. And I was recently reading something from a woman that you're familiar with, Deb, who's since passed, Charlotte Iserby. And she too had discussed the way that community schools were this idea based out of socialism and communitarianism. And that's very interesting to understand, because not a lot of people know or fully embrace or understand communitarian beliefs. But when you think of community schools, think of communitarian schools. The idea is very much the "it takes a village" idea. And obviously, as I've shared before, it's not just promoted by Democratic Socialists of America. Community schools are also promoted through the Communist Party USA website, and so many other activist groups. And the reason why they're also significant in the foundation of curricula is because I was recently watching a webinar, and I'm happy to share that on Twitter later, where one of the leaders in the California Teachers Association stated that community schools are the way we get real ethnic studies.
You mentioned, oh, that idea of 15-minute cities and it's, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Somebody told me about this today. I'm going to switch screens for a second.
Sure.
I was talking to someone on the phone and they said, have you ever read the book This Perfect Day? I said, no, I haven't. And I thought I'd read most of the dystopian novels. And she said, well, you need to know about this book. Never heard of it. This is the book. This book was written. Now, this says January 2010, but the book was actually originally written. This book was originally written in the 40s, I believe. Let's see. It was published in this edition in 2010. But if I would go back to my search results here, this is a dystopian novel. This was its original, 1970. I thought it was the 40s. 1970 was the original. And here is what it says in the description. The same person wrote Rosemary's Baby. Considered one of the great dystopian novels alongside Anthony Burgess's A Clockwork Orange and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, Ira Levin's frightening glimpse into the future continues to fascinate readers even 40 years after publication. The story is set in a seemingly perfect global society. Uniformity is the defining feature. There is only one language, and all ethnic groups have been eugenically merged into one race called the family. The world is ruled by a central computer called Unicomp that has been programmed to keep every single human on the surface of the earth in check. People are continually drugged by means of regular injections so they can never realize their potential as human beings, but will remain satisfied and cooperative. They are told where to live, when to eat, whom to marry, when to reproduce. Even the basic facts of nature are subject to the Unicomp's will. Men do not grow facial hair, women do not develop breasts, and it only rains at night. With a vision as frightening as any in the history in the science fiction genre, This Perfect Day is one of his most haunting novels. So I'll drop the link to that in the comments. But that's 1970. If y'all are interested. And I just thought, like I said, I just thought that was when I said who was home and family and the community and the communitarians. I kind of thought, well, maybe this is a good time to mention, and how fortuitous that I literally just had a conversation about this today.
Yeah,
So.
we have a massive sociology situation where sociology has really taken over so many things. The field of sociology has really incorporated so many different theories, and that's one of the things that I think parents were initially trying to understand when ethnic studies was really starting to be noticed in schools here in California, is that parents were learning about critical race theory, but until they started listening to different podcasters, they were really not aware that all these other critical theories exist, the most absurd ones. And really what James Lindsay and so many others did was help us to kind of really understand all of these academic theories. And I mean, for me, it's just, there's one after another. And the way that some of these subjects are woven into other things. I mean, ethnic studies in California is one facet in which these ideas are promoted throughout classwork and coursework, but we're also seeing the transformation of English classes. We're seeing the transformation completely of social studies and action civics and Constitution Day. We have here in California the State Seal of Civic Engagement program, which does incorporate activism. And a lot of these ideas also align with the political effort of moving the voting age down to 16. And the interesting thing is that students taking the State Seal of Civic Engagement program are also from the public school being encouraged to go out and register people to vote. Now, what we're seeing also in California is students acting as non-voting school board members. So it's very common that we're seeing this idea of, to be honest, these kids, I mean, it's just, I can't imagine looking back at my high school experience. There's so much time in school and so much looking at the clock, and then also wanting, hopefully there is still some semblance of want mastery in the subject matter. But then we move beyond that, and students are spending their days at school being taught activism, and then some of the nights they're now exhibiting the activism. I mean, I can't imagine being a student and then also attending every single school board meeting instead of just being a kid and having fun and enjoying my childhood while it lasts and my teen years while they're there.
Right. Well, they're saddled with this obligation to put what they've learned into action.
Right.
And it's not about applied learning like when we were kids and in school, and you might want to apply what you learned to go build a rocket that you fired in your backyard, or, to, uh, go get a job or do something or make something for your own, enjoyment, or, build one of those soapbox cars, where you go racing. That might be applied knowledge.
Mhm.
Now, the only way they can apply, first of all, the only knowledge they have is that the world's terrible and needs to be completely dismantled. And then the only application for that knowledge is to yell into a bullhorn and complain about it and demand that it be changed. What I want to know, though, is while we're on the subject of kind of activism,
Right.
there's two things here that most parents want to understand. And one is, how did this happen? So in other words, there's a process by which you get something that sophisticated, what we just looked at, that
Mhm.
whole document. That must have taken years to produce. It obviously took a whole lot of people to write it, put it together, get the graphics done, and money. That takes money. And so a lot of people want to know specifically who are the people and who are the money. And then, as important as that, because there are lots of people with lots of money and lots of initiative, but it doesn't then follow that they get what they want into the schools.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we would have, Heritage Foundation has a curriculum in the schools. So there had to have been some linkages to people in positions of power who either wanted it there or who benefited from the support of the people who made it. So they put it there or voted on it. So I'm willing to believe in people being, quote, true believers only to a point. And then my cynicism takes over and I start saying, where's the money coming from and who benefits and how did this all get there? And the reason I'm asking, audience, is that I believe we can learn from California. We can learn from Kelly, since she's sort of worked backwards, and not only identify the players. So if you see their names pop up in your state, it's a big red flag. Wait, our teachers are going to a presentation by this person? Whoa, no. Or this person's coming to speak. No, 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 no. Wait, the local PTA is. So your money maybe right now as we speak spent on having these speakers, bringing them in to teach teachers. And like I said about New Jersey at the outset, they are. And then the second step of that is your government, your governor, your general assembly or legislature may well be playing footsie with them already through your university
Mhm.
or through some kind of NGO that claims it's there to be also helpful and help kids, et cetera. And remember now, governments, state government has the incentive that the federal government is putting pressure on them for, equity goals and ESSER funds and different funds that are meant for social and emotional learning. So anything that they can say justify, helps with mental health or helps with social justice, they can tap into grant money, they can tap into federal money. So they're looking around for ways to spend money, aren't they, Kelly? So it's not even just that they're going, "Ooh, I love and support this." It's like, "Wait, you got something to sell me?" And it's going to
Yeah.
you can sell me on it's going to meet that goal that they're breathing down my necks to okay, let's do it. Everyone else is
Mhm.
doing it. Let's do it. But can you draw us a picture? Like, how did this transpire in California and who do we need to be on the lookout for?
Yeah. So, I mean, originally ethnic studies is during the civil rights movement. It's starting then during what was called the Third World Liberation Front. We have it starting in 1969. Berkeley and San Francisco were key regions of motivation for it. But over the years, it adopted these other ideas because obviously we've got, critical race theory a little bit after. And then from ethnic studies as it's being shaped and molded. Here in California, there's actually someone who is in political office right now who's credited on the California Department of Education's website as the one who first initiated ethnic studies to be taught in grade school, the K through 12 sector, some more than 20 years ago. The idea was put forth. And so we see that this became as a pilot program between 2017 and 2018. And then from there, the legislation was produced and passed. And then after passing, it's not implemented until the year 2025 to 2026. However, individual districts are able and already have, as has this district, required it to be a class taken, typically ninth grade, in order to graduate high school. Students have to take this course. So what happened? When this bill was being put forth, there was an ethnic studies effort at the state level. Many people contributed to making this ethnic studies model curriculum. And thankfully, many people throughout the state of California, many leaders of different organizations, wrote in with regards to complaining of anti-Semitic content in the curriculum. So a lot of that content, but I would say not all of it, was taken out before it became law. So there is a group that is working still to promote their version, or what they may call real ethnic studies, into classes in a variety of ways. I mean, my understanding is that they even tried to go to the UC system and require that students entering the UC must have that version of ethnic studies. There's been many different groups along the way that have promoted ethnic studies. And I will say it's not just California.
Yeah.
There was a couple years ago, this website, and I don't know if you want to show the website, but if you'd like to,
Sure.
it's called savearabamericanstudies.org, because I was simply trying to understand who or what is promoting this curriculum. And I had not, I'd just been searching different terms and just trying to find everything I could. And so I had come across this website, and then you'll see it's a website that says it's from the Arab Resource and Organizing Center. This is a 2021 conference called Free Minds, Free People. Transnationalism is a very big aspect of ethnic studies that was picked up after the initial 1969 effort to introduce ethnic studies. But if you scroll to the bottom, you'll see images of
Angela Davis.
Correct. Yes.
So right wing and anti-Palestinian attacks on California ethnic studies.
Mm-hmm. And then
California abandons its commitment to ethnic studies. That's not even true. Wow. Decimate. They love to use words like genocide and decimate and, demolish. All they did, near as I can tell from looking at the two versions, is they just nipped around the edges and took out some of the strongest language that was anti-Israel. That's all they did. And they took out the Aztec, didn't they? They took out the Aztec chants. And why wouldn't you? They were talking about human sacrifice.
The Ashi prayers are not allowed. This group in San Diego, represented by the Thomas More Society, group of parents sued the state of California. I actually was asked to submit some of this material as evidence, and did. And the state and the parents were able to settle. And so the state had to send a letter to every district, school district, to remove the material. So this gives you an idea of one coalition of groups with regards to ethnic studies.
Well, we know that CARE is really nothing more than, Hamas support in the United States. I mean, it's
well
so
documented.
It's so well documented. It's absurd anymore for people to allow. I mean, Joe Biden has members of CARE in his anti-Semitism task force. It is utterly absurd. They are so well known for this, as is there's an organization not listed here, but or maybe they are and I'm missing it. No, I don't see it, but it's it's the fundraising group, the one that collects all the money that was supposed to go to little orphan children, but it doesn't go to orphan children, it goes to Hamas. They're a big funder of CARE.
Mm.
And, and the people involved with CARE are big, you know, these groups. Yeah.
If you could click on that FMMFP up top, that purple rectangle,
This one?
right there, that learn more. This
Oh,
was a conference that took place in 2021, but it had speakers from different parts of the United States, in addition to, I believe, at least one presenter was from another country.
it's very important for people to note, who don't already know, that this might as well say Jewish. Understand that probably 99% of Jews in the world support the existence of Israel, believe that Israel has a right to exist and a right to defend itself. What goes on in its internal politics, everybody, differs, blah, blah, blah. But Zionism is simply, I mean, it's like Americanism. It's like believing that the United States has a right to exist. What about Ukrainianism? Do you believe that Ukraine has the right to self-determine and shouldn't be taken back over by Russia? That's all it is. People have tried to turn this into a dirty word. That's it. It could because Jewish landism doesn't really make sense. So Zionism is just an easier word to say, but that's what it means. There's no existence of Israel at all. It would cease to exist without Zionism. That's all it is. So when they say fight Zionist and right wing attacks, they're saying fight Jewish. That's what you need to read it as. And they might as well say, when they oppose Zionism, they might as well say they're comfortable with Jewish genocide. There are 9 million people in Israel, and only 2 million of them are not Jewish. So you know what that means.
Right.
All right. So this was last year or last summer.
Yeah, I think this one was 2021, but it just
Oh, okay. A couple of years ago.
it's helpful for people who are interested to kind of understand, you know, there have been people who thought this was strictly California, but not all the participants are in California. Free Minds, Free People in the past had events in different parts of the country. So,
Well, it's also very interesting because you'll see people who are from, South Africa, New Zealand, Mexico, Brazil. You're seeing people from all over the world who
mhm.
are not just from here.
Yes,
And I think that's important as well because, right? So,
it's really important because it begs the question, who or whom is funding this and why and how much and how long, uh,
right.
and really truly why, what's the goal here? um you
Yeah,
know
is
I
there I gotta say, even after 9/11, when we were directly attacked, the number of alleged, Islamophobic attacks, several of them were found out to be hoaxes, by the way, that's not what they were. And in fact, I think the last time I checked, the number of attacks in the United States, as well as the body count from them by Islamic radicals or people claiming to be Islamic radicals. There was one out in California, the famous one that was it San Bernardino, I think, where they went in and shot up that conference full of people. It was like a married couple that did it, or anyway, that was one. They killed so many people in that one day. They were trapped in this big ballroom, and then we had the nightclub attack. Remember the nightclub? and then you had where it was, I guess, a gay nightclub, and then you also had the attack on the Asian women, in the whatever, it was a massage place or something. So there have been multiple attacks, the Boston bombing, and even right after 9/11, we didn't have that many. In other words, there's not widespread anti-Arab or anti-Muslim sentiment in the United States. There are entire pockets of the United States that are, like in Michigan, right? And in Minnesota, where the population of a given town is predominantly Muslim without incident. And you've got different people representing them in Congress. So, what was the impetus for ethnic studies in California? Did they have examples saying we have to keep the Palestinian stuff or the Arab stuff, or we have to keep ethnic studies because of reason? Like, what was their defense? Did they have one?
I mean, they really, really, I mean, to me, it's really not a strong defense. I mean, they believe firmly that real ethnic studies means teaching Palestine, as they would call it. There's some different coalitions that exist. One of the primary groups is called the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Coalition, and LESMC for short. And they have a website if you want to pull it up. But
Sure.
there's been over the years a lot of different groups. There's a website called Ethnic Studies Now, which was many different groups joining together to sign on to call for ethnic studies. And then there's the Coalition for Ethnic Studies or Liberated Ethnic Studies. They have their own website as well.
There's so many. I was just looking for it, and I see. Like, let's see if I go to here. I found this.
Yes.
Coalition for Liberated Ethnic Studies.
And I think if you click about on the drop down organizations, this gives quite a list of all of the different groups.
This is the one right here, the Abolitionist Teaching Network, where the speaker at the webinar that I'm going to have you guys listen to a little bit of, that's where that speaker comes from.
Right.
And this is a lot of organizations.
Santa Barbara is a very key area for ethnic studies, as is Los Angeles, as is San Diego, and some school districts north, San Francisco and whatnot as well.
Zito.
This one. Yeah, Zito is based out of Arizona. That's right. And a lot of people wonder, how do we find out about these organizations? I mean, there's always the opportunity to look into their funders, their 990 forms, if you know how to do that. Another thing that I remember telling some parents, that's a very simple thing to do to kind of understand what is taught, is to go open your Instagram account and search hashtag ethnic studies now. And that's it. And then just see what comes up. Look at the other hashtags that are utilized in that one hashtag. Maybe you come across a post on Instagram that says hashtag ethnic studies now. And then maybe there's 5 other hashtags. Maybe consider searching those. It gives you a little window into understanding what's being taught, what's being promoted, and what it's about by that. And then some of these different accounts that we see, not only on this page, but on the previous page, are posting right now these pro-Palestinian protest times and dates, because they're holding them regularly. I know San Francisco and Los Angeles alike have had them. I just found out that there was one in my community yesterday.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And do they sometimes call ethnic studies something else, like African American studies? Or because I think the thing in Cherry Hill, for example, is they haven't called it ethnic studies yet in the district. They are calling it African American Studies, but near as I can tell, the creators of the African American Studies program that is now mandatory in Cherry Hill are some of the same people, or affiliated with some of the same people as created the stuff that you're seeing in California and other states. You have somebody named Goldie Muhammad, who I think has been instrumental in ethnic studies. She's definitely involved with Black Lives Matter, I believe. You've got Black Lives Matter in schools that are affiliated, and they're affiliated with ethnic studies too, are they not?
Yes, actually, very much so. Zito, for example, connected there. At least one member of Zito is connected to one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter, Patrisse Cullors. And then, I mean, in my county, on their County Office of Education website, they have a social justice tab. And amidst that, you're going to find the 1619 Project, Black Lives Matter at School. This is stuff that they're recommending for all the area school districts. And you're also going to have the Zinn Education Project, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Within those resources, within these supplemental resources, you will find components of ethnic studies, because if it's not a required course material, it's easy for a teacher to just add it as a supplemental lesson in any class they want, because there is a lot of autonomy in the classroom.
Right, exactly. And, what I'm seeing, like, just to compare and contrast, to show you guys what another district has, I'm gonna, here is, and this is like a whole document. This is from Cherry Hill Public Schools, Cultural Proficiency, Equity, and Character Education. So this is like how far along they are in the evolution towards ethnic studies. But this is a precursor, is it not?
It is, absolutely.
Okay, so parents, if you're like, oh, yay, we don't have ethnic studies in our school. Do you have something that sounds like this? Do you have Black Lives Matter in your school? Do you have Black history, Black educate, whatever? I mean, that's why Governor DeSantis jumped on board and had this task force reevaluate the Black history curriculum, because it was trending in this direction as well. But, so they'll tend to start off telling you it's about respect, responsibility, citizenship, and cultural proficiency, right? But now look what it says.
Their definition of those words.
Though you have to drill, you can't stop here, parents. You can't go, oh, that sounds nice. You have to get to, what do they mean by that? Because you're getting closer to where Kelly is out in California. Cultural proficiency is a mindset and worldview, the way a person or an organization makes assumptions for effectively describing, responding to, and planning for issues that are in diverse environments. The cultural proficiency continuum identifies the ranges of values and behaviors of an individual and or the policies, blah, 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 blah. And the training should first allow individuals to know where they stand. This is just a really delicate way of saying, we're going to identify your identities and your power and privilege associated with them. But this
we're
is
going to give you a side of cultural consciousness that you will now live by, because we're right and you're going to fall in line with what we have to say and what we believe.
Yes. But this is fascinating to me. Equity is equality of opportunity with a focus on outcomes and results. Then it's not equality of opportunity. If you're focusing on outcomes and results, if that's your goal, that's what we keep saying. It's not about equality of opportunity. So they're also saying it's an educational movement that supports the social, emotional, and ethical development of students. And remember when Kelly said about wellness and some of those words, there it again, student wellness, student voice is in there. That's a really nice soft way of saying activism.
100%.
And connecting beyond the classroom, that means in the community, right?
Well,
whole child.
And one thing I want to say to student voice, you might see student voice. You might also see student agency.
Yeah. Yes.
Same thing.
But their definition of agency is very, very different, because what you'll find out is that if the student were to say, well, I want to use my agency to do something completely different than any of this, they will be shamed and, treated like, how dare you be so individualistic, you selfish person. Obviously, we never say it quite like that, but it would be more along the lines of, that's an interesting idea,
Right.
but up talk, but I don't think that is really in keeping with the character education that we're trying to emphasize. And, they steer the kids away. I mean, I have to do it. I'm
Yeah.
right.
Well, and the interesting thing, so I've talked to multiple parents whose students have gone through this school district and some of the other school districts in our area. And I will just say it's no surprise, but if you're a student that is outspoken about your conservatism,
Oh, you're
um,
done.
if you're not conforming, you are very much challenged by the staff. And I've talked to staff as well, and staff have shared with me what what goes on, some of the things that are said and done, and it's just repulsive.
It is. They really will. Behind closed doors, they will bully the students. I was hoping to find like a resource list, but it doesn't seem to be there. But I just wanted to show how it looks when it's a little, it's not as far along on the evolutionary timeline as far as what the words they use. But even in California, didn't it kind of like change how they presented it? Like, first it was like, oh no, it's just that did they come right in with all the guns blazing?
Um, usually it's subtle, like a lot of things, where it's there and then it's moving along because like just about anything I see in education, whether it's now my experience with social emotional learning or comprehensive sexuality education, it usually starts off as a pilot in one or two districts. If they get a little bit of pushback from parents, teachers go to conferences where they're trained in exactly how to handle that pushback.
Right.
Even in how to be training in handling pushback from coworkers. So they manage the pushback and they reframe their narratives and counter narratives, and then they build and build and build and then try and gain allies for their agenda. It's just a big organizing effort. And the interesting thing with ethnic studies is you have a lot of influence from members in California Teachers Association, United Teachers Los Angeles, the National Education Association, also AFT members. And then you have different universities that are integral to the development of these programs, and one being UCLA.
Right.
Yeah.
And even here, I opened up this resources thing, the committee, and I see here it says in which variety by reason of race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, physical appearance, social economic class, family structure, physical and developmental abilities. So now we're getting way beyond what they said before. They said it was character, and then you keep drilling down, and you get to more stuff, right? This was what
Right.
I had pulled up, their cultural proficiency equity care 5-year plan. So as Kelly pointed out, you'll see it as like a pilot program or a 5-year plan or a 2-year plan or some kind of plan. And they may call it cultural proficiency, may call it ethnic studies, they may call it, like I said, African American studies or social justice and Black history curriculum, etc. And eventually they all merge, don't they? They all just kind of come together in this giant liberated ethnic studies thing. What's the difference between liberated ethnic studies and ethnic studies?
That is a good question. I mean, typically the model that is liberated is going to incorporate a lot more of what you see in the curriculum that I have. This is those that are promoting the liberated ethnic studies model curriculum. They are not shy at all about critical race theory, where it derives from. Many of these people purporting this are openly admitting to holding a belief system in Marxism. And not only that, but those who are promoting what they would call real ethnic studies are always promoting the model that aligns with a belief in Palestine and all of those ideas. And these are the same people on who are organizing these protests and promoting them on their social media accounts, left and right. Liberated is this very radical neo-Marxism, and it's not really even trying, like I said, it's not trying to hide necessarily what it's doing. It's just all out there.
Well, I pulled up one of the other websites that, and I'm trying to get it to be pulled up on the screen here. That was one of the other, you mentioned different liberated ethnic studies, coalitions and organizations. And this was another one. This is from the Liberated Studies Model Curriculum, Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum. Which one is this called?
The consortium?
Consortium. Yeah, this one. Okay. And I scrolled down to their vision statement and I kind of went past that because I wanted to share this. This says what the students will be taught. So you showed some curriculum, like lesson type stuff, right? But this is basically stating their objectives. And this stood out to me. Center and place high value on pre-colonial, ancestral, indigenous, diasporic, familial, and marginalized knowledge. So that's saying give priority to and elevate above. It's not an in addition to. And you'll hear in this clip I'm going to play in a bit, you're going to hear the woman presenting say that explicitly. This is not an also, in addition to. This is instead of. And that says right there, center and place high value on pre-colonial, ancestral, indigenous, diasporic, familial, and marginalized knowledge. And then it says systems oppression. Students will explore and analyze systems of oppression and be able to imagine a better world. That's right. That's why you send your kids to school. Critique empire and its relationship to white supremacy, racism, patriarchy, cis heteropatriarchy, capitalism, ableism, anthropocentrism, and I'm sorry, what? Anthropocentrism? What would we have instead? Feline procentrism? I mean, like, what are we centering now? Animals? Plants? Mushrooms? I mean, okay. And other forms of power and oppression at the intersections of our society challenge imperialist colonial. So when you think about recent current events and while the students are marching, are they really, do you think, pro-Palestinian? Or have they been told that Israel is a settler colonial nation and therefore the sides are clear? Like, irrespective of what happened on the ground with Hamas, if we pick out which country or which group of people represent the oppressor, we're against them.
Yeah, kids are being taught really that they're being taught the framework that the adults that are your teachers and your staff, that we have determined and figured out who are the bad guys and who are the good guys. And hey, kids, you have a chance in life to take it upon yourself to be the good guys and speak up against the bad guys. I mean, honestly, this is indoctrination.
Well, and everything's divided into the binary. Like, look at this. White privilege is your history being part of the core curriculum and mine being taught as an elective. No. If you want to say, Western European history is part of the core curriculum and other parts of history are not, there's a reason for that. It has nothing to do with white privilege, white supremacy, or anything like that. It has to do with which parts of history have actually shaped the world in which we live more, and which are the ones that our students need to be proficient in and understand in order to understand the present. History is just the story of how the present became the present. Mm-hmm. And clearly the present became the present because of the people who won, the people who got to write the history books. And you want to, go, oh, well, that's not fair and not nice and not this and not that. I mean, you're making a value judgment. Just because people were weak doesn't mean they were good. Hitler lost too. poor pitiful baby. I mean, that doesn't make you good.
Right.
So, and you can say, well, you won by other means that weren't fair, but the bottom line is that's what happened. That's the reality. Now, if you want to go back and look at primary sources and challenge some of the narratives around what happened, but you don't not teach what happened, like as the thing, you don't replace it with the history of primitive people.
Right.
Because they're not running anything right now. And unless you'd like to put the Aztecs back in power or have us all live in teepees, sorry if you find that offensive, but we're not going back there. We live here. So what
Right.
is the future that they imagine, this utopian future, going to look like if we eliminate the study of the history of how we got here completely? We wipe it away. We change memory. We literally erase memory. What are we left with? They're not giving us, I don't see anywhere in here what we're supposed to build instead.
Right. It's a lot about tearing down. If you ask some of these proponents what they do want, yeah, it's a very interesting analysis, because at the college level, it's very interesting to hear what they say. A lot of it is about deconstruction, not construction, not building up, not finding all of these solutions. And so to me, there's multiple aspects here of what got these people into doing this, what keeps them doing this, and who is funding the effort.
Right.
When, with regards to ethnic studies, there's a book that this Salinas curriculum actually took from. It's called Rethinking Ethnic Studies. And so some of the pages that are in the Salinas curriculum are just taken directly out and put in the Salinas student curriculum. And there's a man that goes by the name now, Artolteca Quayton. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but he was listed as one of the editors of that Rethinking Ethnic Studies book, and he was actually contracted with the Salinas School District to develop that curriculum and administer training to the staff.
Yeah, and when you look at, for example, the website, you get this.
Mm-hmm.
So they're climbing this pile of books, and they're putting the fists in the air. This is the communist fist.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, a Rethinking Schools. If you're not familiar with Rethinking Schools, it is a completely Marxist organization. We have Gloria Ladson Billings. She is a big one in so-called culturally responsive or culturally relevant education. Who else do we have up in here? In this
University of
moment.
Arizona, no surprise there.
Yep, exactly.
Loyola.
So yeah, this is another, just like the Howard Zinn organization, it's very Marxist. So what did California parents end up doing and how hard was it to just get the Aztec chance? You mentioned a lawsuit.
Yeah, parents filed a lawsuit with Californians for Equal Rights, which is a wonderful organization I recommend. And that lawsuit, which was represented by the Thomas More Society, was successful. The state had just no strong case, not strong opening statements, and it's inexcusable. It's inexcusable as to why they have these ashy prayers. And that's what parents were able to challenge, was that students are being asked to take on a religious practice. And, you can't force students to, do religious practice in schools. And so that was taken out.
Right.
But it is interesting. I was going to say, it is interesting to wonder, what is the significance of Aztec culture? What is the significance of the Aztec gods of human sacrifice. How are they used? Who are they used by
Right.
outside of ethnic studies? And that's an important, I think, question for many people to be pondering is why and who uses them and what is the significance? And is there any concern over how these are used? And if there is concern, why are they now being incorporated into a student curriculum?
Right.
And is it solely for historical purposes and a history for ethnic studies and cultural purposes? Or is there more to it than that? Because I'm always asking the why. I'm always wondering, kind of like when I saw that ecology or ecological, um, you just, when you're interacting with a curriculum, which I know you already do this, Deb, if somebody in your audience is a parent in another state that's wondering, how do I analyze a curriculum, even if I see a little bit of it? Start notating in your mind some of the phrases that are repeat phrases, the terms that you see, especially if they're standalone terms. If it's something that you would just pass by, I highly encourage people to highlight those terms and really look into why is that there and what's the significance of it.
Right.
Because, um, you know,
Yeah, if you don't if you think you understand something, but it's still a fairly general term, I always encourage people to question it because your child's curriculum should be easy for you to understand. You went through school, right? You graduated high school. So while you might not be able to do their physics work or understand everything they're learning in math, certainly you should be able to read the description of what they'll be learning and why, and it should make perfect sense to you without a lot of explanation. And if it sounds too good to be true, or it sounds sort of like it doesn't require a lot of academic acumen, and it's more about people getting along and it's respect and character and all this kind of stuff. Remember, who is supposed to teach your child character? Why did we let that get co-opted so easily? It's character education, and parents are going, okay. Why are they not saying, wait, what? That's not your job. Your job is to teach things I can't teach. I can teach character. And what happens to a lot of parents is they project onto every other child but their own bad parents. It's fascinating to me. It's absolutely fascinating. It makes you wonder if people have like a guilty conscience or something. But you think about yourself, like, do you think you're a good parent or a decent parent, a good enough parent? At least where this is concerned, you teach your kids to say please and thank you and not, be a jerk. Okay, why do you assume that in your district, where presumably there are a fair number of people who are similar to you, I mean, even if you're not the same race and so forth, why are you projecting onto them that they can't possibly do this? So we need all the kids to have this. And then your kid's going to get it too. And it might conflict with what you're teaching them. It's like they don't even go through this thought process. It just makes me wonder if parents are going, oh, good, one less thing for me to do. I hope not. I don't
Yeah.
want to assume that, but I do want parents to stop and think that's kind of how it looks after a while.
Right.
To the analysts out here who are looking at y'all going, what's that? What's happening? I don't know why. Why is this happening? And like, when did you decide it was okay for these public servants to teach your children character?
Right.
Especially when 10 years ago you were bitching about new math. The same people who came up with that garbage are now teaching your kids something more important. I would argue character is more important than math because character is what's going to have you not cheat on the math test and study instead. Go find a tutor if you
Exactly.
can't do it. It's not the one that can't, bad character. You're going to go, I don't have to learn the math. I'll just pay someone to do it for me. I'll cheat. So that's how we end up with people like Joe Biden, is when we say character is, we can outsource that to government. So I want to show people your Twitter, some of your Twitter stuff, because I want to make sure people are following you. And then I'm going to go let them listen to some of this video. But this is recent. This is the Arab Resource and Organizing Center, who organized
Mhm.
for liberated ethnic studies in California with Angela Davis and other organizations protesting at the Israeli consulate in San Francisco to support Palestine after horrific attacks on Israeli civilians. This was on their Instagram. Now, I'm going to mute it because you don't need to hear their nonsense, but I want you to see what their signs say more clearly. Israel is a terror state. So this is not, understand something. They're not saying, free Palestine from Hamas. They're not saying free the hostages. They're not saying even ceasefire because we don't like war. They're saying Israel is a terror state. This is on the heels of 1,400 Israelis being brutally murdered and over 200 kidnapped into Gaza. And
that was a
this
snake
is
in a
what,
fist there too.
yeah,
You're right.
this is what they're doing. So, Israel's a terror state. And then, of course, we have the signs end all U.S. aid to support to Israel. And they have lots of the snake in the fist. Explain what the snake in the fist mean.
That, I mean, I honestly don't know.
Oh, okay.
That's a new
So I
one to
thought maybe
me,
you knew.
but
It says unity in something, something, but they're grabbing the tongue of the snake, and they're grabbing it with a fist. Free all Palestinian political prisoners. They're all Hamas. There are no political prisoners. The prisoners in Israel are terrorists. Israel doesn't take political prisoners. Israel is a democratic country. You're allowed to have different views. What you're not allowed to do is kill people because of them. So, yes, they have lots of Hamas in prison. And one of the demands that Hamas has been making for the freedom of the hostages is free those prisoners. So they come here in our country and get other students to march and so forth, saying that they're political prisoners. Then this says all out for Palestine. And they have this protest. Here they are some more. Free all Palestinian political prisoners. Palestine will be free. Funding land theft. No theft was no land was stolen. In fact, one could argue that Arabs are the colonizers in the Middle East. There's ample support for that. Democratic, secular Palestine. Well, that's fascinating because Hamas is definitely theocratic. While they were democratically elected, they haven't had elections since. In 18 years, they've not had elections. So I just want to show that. Then these were the groups that we saw that fund what we just saw. Not only do they fund the liberated ethnic studies curriculum, they fund what we just saw. And what is this that we're looking at?
Oh, these are statements of support that are listed on that Save Arab American Studies website. The statements of support are different organizations that have supported their ethnic studies curriculum. And so you can actually go to the website, click those 3 lines on the website, click statements of support, and then you can open up and download each individual document. So you've got documents from the Teachers Union, you have Black Lives Matter Global Network. And again, that's global. So again, when you have anything happening in one country or in one region of a country that is global, you have to ask yourself, are there entities outside of the United States which are funding and directing social change from within our school systems, from within our culture and our life, outside of our country, that are driving our education system? This is a really serious topic because, I would say, we just had the report from Parents Defending Education with regards to China. This idea that there's these radical ideas permeating our education system is really important to be aware of, especially when considering where the funding comes from.
And speaking of that funding, what are some of those organizations? You mentioned, I think this one, Tides Center.
Yes, so this is an account at M8MA Bear. And this account looked into some of the funding, and you should be able to scroll down there. This particular examination is, I believe, the Arab Resource and Organizing Center.
This one is Tides Organizations, Notes to Consolidated Financial Statements, Tides Network, blah, blah, promote shared prosperity and social justice, 140 projects and activities. Building a world. So yes, and I think I looked at this the other day and noted, so this here is their return. Tide Center accelerates the pace of social change, working with innovative partners. And some of those partners are organizations like we're seeing. So here we have $501 million, $501,815,757 contributions and grants reported on Tide Center form. And it identifies equity as one of the 3 largest program services. And then I
Yep.
think there was even more information about, yep, equity within our largest area of impact, multilaterally to create more equal opportunity, et cetera. Education. In 2021, Tides Project enriched the education of youth and adults living in local underserved communities, whatever that means. Salinas is not underserved for sure, right? I mean, by their
Well,
definition.
Salinas, and see, here's the interesting thing for me. In our entire county, from what I've observed, this is the most intense curriculum of all school districts in our county. In our entire county, that district has the most students. And most people listening may wonder, where is Salinas? It's approximately 2 hours south of San Francisco. And the reason why a lot of people will know Salinas is because you likely get your produce in your grocery store from the Salinas and Watsonville region. We are known in this area for strawberries, for leaf lettuce, for also Martinelli's apple juice is not too far away, and their apple farms. So when you think of Salinas, there are definitely large populations of students who are perhaps some of which are children of migrant farm workers. And
Oh,
you
I
have a
see. Okay.
district where academic mastery is a struggle. But you know what? The reality is there's so much time in a day. And I think personally that if schools were putting every single dime into creating student success, the students in Salinas could be the highest mastery level of districts. They could be students that are ready and prepared for success for their future. But I just find it interesting that of all the districts in the county, that's the district that gets this curriculum. And
Because
it's a
it is the
concern.
most, it's, yeah, well, and they're probably going to be the easiest to activate if you get them all up in their feels. Um, I think when I said underserved, I meant more like they're not getting no attention. They get a lot. Salinas gets a lot of focus. Um,
Right. Yeah.
so what now, looking at these years, look at how fast, look at these, how they go up, and we go from 2019 to 2020. That's a big jump. And then from 2020 to 2021, we double $250 million to $507 million. Where is this money coming from? We are in the middle, and then the total. We're in the middle of inflation. We had COVID. People didn't have money. Are these gifts, grants, contributions, and membership fees coming from? This is what I am just baffled by. And then they show, Alliance for Global Justice, Purdue University Global, We the People of Detroit, Northern Cass Public School District. So this is money they're giving out, but this is money that somehow came in. Where did it come from?
Mm-hmm.
These
And
are
that's the
questions that I
interesting
want
thing.
answered.
Yeah, because this money is being spent to, again, as they said, they want equal outcomes, equality of outcomes, social justice, equity. So they are funding social justice, which again, that's transformative change. And so who is funding this? Are they even in this country?
And I would love to know the process whereby they choose the districts, because you just pointed out they've chosen Salinas for a reason, right? They're giving these grants and these gifts out. This one, Regents of the University of California at Los Angeles, UCLA Labor Center.
We are in a place in education where we fund a tremendous amount of money into education. There is so much funding, and and yet we've got, I almost feel like we should get our money back. We really should, because students are they're not I mean, they're sitting in these schools. They always talk about the school to prison pipeline, a lot of these activists. And I understand what they're saying. However, when you force your political ideology on students who are forced to sit through your coursework, and you treat them like you're a puppet, you're a puppeteer holding the puppet strings and forcing the kids to sit there and endure indoctrination, and you're not giving them mastery to set them up for excellence and success, while you have all this money streaming in that is really not benefiting the students or going to their success, that is a huge disservice. There really is. The people who promote all of the social justice, all of these DEI committees and all of these things, it just fires me up, because it is largely performative, it is largely political. And if they really truly believed what they say they believe to be true, they would be out there demanding accountability, and they would be out there volunteering their time to ensure that the students who are falling behind in mathematics, in writing, are able to enjoy learning and be able to achieve mastery, and just really truly be prepared for success. But these school systems are completely broken, completely. And this is a system of conformity. That's just what I've seen. I know there are many good teachers out there. I still want to kind of preface my passionate soapbox speech with that, because I know many wonderful teachers and staff, and they want to actually teach kids. They want to see the light bulb go off and the children get excited about a new subject or something that they were able to do successfully. But this is not it. This is a corrupt political system. And
Without a
think
doubt.
about it, the contract for this person who developed ethnic studies was roughly $1,500 per hour. Think about the money that could have gone to students achieving mastery. It's
It's really
heartbreaking.
painful to think about. It really is. And, and then I think too of what they might think of themselves if they figured out someday that they were out there chanting for people who raped women and murdered babies and kidnapped grandmothers with Alzheimer's and did God only knows what to them. And, the same kids that are being taught about how important it is, the Me Too generation, how important it is to be respectful and, understand people's differences, whatever. And they're essentially out there cheering to keep people in power, because that's really what it is. If there's a ceasefire, Hamas stays in power. If Israel loses, Hamas is in power, not just there, but as free reign to go kill the rest of the people in Israel. So
Right.
what they're chanting for, whether they understand it or not, is mass murder and rape and a theocratic, barbaric, uncivilized group of people in Hamas. Now, there's a difference, of course, between the Arab people who live in Gaza. I call them Gazans. I don't call them Palestinians, because there's never been a country by that name. There's been a region by that name. There's been an area that was colonized and then a mandate of the British that was by that name. But you had the Romans that named it, and then the British. There has never been a country. The flag was the invention of the British to stir up, nationalist pride against the Ottoman Turks. So it doesn't represent, they are not the indigenous people of that area at all. They're Arabs like the other Arabs in all the other countries. That doesn't mean they didn't live there before. That I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying the indigenous people of the land literally are the Jews, going back 5,000 years. And Yet our students who've taken ethnic studies never learned about indigeneity as far as Hebrew people, Israelites, Judah, any of that. No, they don't learn that. They don't learn about the land of Zion. They don't learn about any of that. Irrespective of the Bible, they're not even learning it as history. They only learn that history began in this region in 1948. It's basically all they're not even going back before 1948. And then they place on their intersectional chart, they place Jews, Zionists, and the state of Israel as an oppressor. That's how they do it. Colonial power, settler oppressor, like they call it apartheid. It's not, and so on. And then when they want to have groups like this, Middle East Children's Alliance, you want to help children in the Middle East because that would be helpful. Get them out from under this regime of Hamas because they train them as young as 3 to hold automatic weapons. They place. There was just a picture today. I have to show it actually because it's just not to be believed. But here it is. This is a square showing a rocket launcher. This is a school. It's right next to a swing set. If we care about children, we don't go out and protest in such a way that would leave the people in power who do this. But because we teach ethnic studies, that's exactly what we're doing. And we've got kids as young as 6th grade, some even younger, holding up signs because they had this. Take ethnic studies teachers and teacher leaders to Palestine next summer. I don't know when this was. This is October. I don't think you're going there next year. Sorry. I could be wrong, but they're escalating and targeted attacks against educators to support, including Palestine in their K12. What do you want to teach about?
What was really disturbing too was watching the coverage on Twitter from the Zen Education Project and what they were saying.
Horrible.
It was. And then that group is currently sharing with teachers nationwide all these lessons to bring to your classroom. And they were encouraging in the classroom the lesson. I'm trying to remember which lesson it was. Oh, about that false bombing report. They were wanting that to be taught in schools and in classrooms. And my concern too is that with regards to ethnic studies and some of these supplemental materials, the activists want it in K through 12. They don't just want it in 9th grade. They want it all grades.
It's no different.
It's no different from comprehensive sexuality education. It starts as a pilot. You get activists demanding it. Then it comes through legislation by force. Then it's usually required once in high school. Then the activists start working their work to try and make it mandatory in all grades.
Well, I said I had some sound or video or whatever you want to call it, and I want to play some of that because I think the audio will be really helpful. So here's what we've got. Actually, I can share it as a video. Hold on a second. I can pull it up as a video. And I think that will make it easier. Where is it? Yeah. Okay.
A curriculum in California for ethnic studies was...
Hold on one second. I want to make sure that you guys can hear it. Okay. So to the audience, if you have any difficulty hearing this, please let me know as soon as possible. And I will pull it up a different way because I'm using this as I'm sharing it as a video file. And so I'm assuming it's sharing the sound. Okay, here we go.
A curriculum in California for ethnic studies was dismantled in a sense and watered down and rewritten because of the inclusion of Palestine in that curriculum.
I'm going to stop for a moment. Can you hear it? Can somebody tell me? Okay, great. So this is Abolitionist Teaching Network. And this Dr. Anita Fernandez is who's speaking. Okay. She's been a teacher, educator, and organizer for over 20 years. Her teaching, scholarship, activism, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This is the person. After the 2012 dismantling of Tucson's renowned Mexican American Studies program, Dr. Fernandez co-founded and serves as the director of the Institute for Teaching, Organizing, Zito, to carry on the legacy of whatever this is. In that capacity, Dr. Fernandez has been locally and nationally involved in the fight for ethnic studies and the need for statewide policies to require, that means force, ethnic studies at the K-12 level. That is what she is fighting for.
And so anytime they're using that X at the end, they're trying to eliminate because they're anti heteronormativity, which for anybody in the audience not knowing, that's the normal belief that, typically relationships are male and female. So they want to go against it. So instead of Chicana and Chicano, it's that word. And then Zito, XITO is their acronym. And they're out of Arizona.
Okay. And what I've done is to protect my whistleblower who recorded this, I've just put in some images along the way. Some of them are slides from this presentation. And I don't know if we'll be able to listen to all of it, but I'm going to take you through as much of it as we can get through. Other things to know about this. This, as I said at the outset, was a webinar that teachers, not just from Cherry Hill, New Jersey, but nationwide, over 200 teachers attended this one presentation on a Saturday night, and their districts paid for it. There were several teachers, I don't know how many exactly, but from the Cherry Hill district who attended because they were strongly encouraged to do so. So you can surmise that the other, however many teachers around the country were also likewise strongly encouraged, and tax dollars were used to pay for their attendance. This counts as professional development training for which they get credit. So they're highly incentivized to do this.
And so there was a Arab American Studies organizing group called Save Arab American Studies Coalition that got together to fight back against that. Many of us were involved in that. And after that, a group of us got together and said, let's launch a coalition with all of our organizations to start to organize together on not only ethnic studies, but also the connections between the pushback on critical race theory, Black Lives Matter in schools, the attacks on queer and trans youth. And so we had this sense of urgency to develop this coalition that we developed it in 2021. And so if we can go to the next slide. And so we have, both goals and points of unity. And I think it's important to share our points of unity because they are drawing from the original ethnic studies worldview rooted in the Third World Liberation Front movement from the 60s. And you can read yourself.
So you heard that. This is rooted in the Third World Liberation Front from the 60s. And you also heard her say that they formed this coalition to also address pushback against CRT, BLM in schools, gender studies, queer studies, all of that. So the liberated ethnic studies and the coalitions that are forming to try to force this into our K-12 schools are also working with all of these other alphabet soup people so that they can be stronger together. This is classic Marxist, organizing.
What they are there, but this sort of ties into what I'll be talking about a little bit later in terms of the importance of internationalism in this moment and having a global
internationalism also is a big communist concept
lens in this moment as we talk about Palestine, as we talk about ethnic studies. So next slide. So this isn't exactly about the coalition, but I do think it's important to differentiate between liberatory, decolonial, authentic ethnic studies and what is being co-opted by not only the right, but as we heard Rowan talk about in the last session, we heard other folks talk about, even white liberal co-opting of.
Did you hear that? White liberal co-opting of this. And just listen closely to the next thing she says.
Ethnic studies. And so this kind of goes, this is supposed to be animated, but it's not. So it goes from, the bullets go from like left to right. So as many of you know, I know we have ethnic studies scholars here, but some of you might not know. Ethnic studies is a 50-year plus discipline that centers and reclaims racialized.
Sorry, there's sound in the back from the person who is watching it. I'm gonna need to skip ahead of that because I don't want you to hear a child's voice for her privacy. But what she's saying is a 50-year-long project, and I'm gonna skip a little bit because then I know it goes away. And it is not multicultural education.
which includes Arab American studies, Black and African American, and
Oh,
that's a
God.
lot of what we're seeing are folks trying to co-opt ethnic studies to be a more multicultural approach where everybody is included, right? There is a space and a place for multicultural ed, but it's not ethnic studies.
I would love to know what that space is. What is the space for multicultural ed that is not ethnic studies? But she's making a distinction that not everybody is included. So if you hear people telling you it's about inclusion and different, it's not. It's explicitly not.
And ethnic studies is intersectional, it's interdisciplinary, it's decolonizing, and it's a liberatory education project. It's not what folks on the right are saying, which is oppression studies, right? Yes, we teach about oppression. Yes, we analyze through the lenses of oppression, but it's not oppression studies.
A distinction without a difference. What? It's not oppression studies. I've never heard of you, Kelly. Have you heard anyone on the so-called right call it, or anyone for that matter, call it oppression studies?
Haven't heard
I've never
that
heard that.
yet.
I've heard people say they teach oppression. They teach about oppressor. What I've heard that, which she just admitted it does, but I've never heard anyone call it oppression studies. That's weird.
Ethnic studies is a counter narrative to the dominant narrative. So it's also not about multiple perspectives or like all sides of the story.
You heard it. It's not about multiple perspectives or all sides of the story.
And that, I think, is most important in this historical moment we're in, as we keep hearing about these two-sided stories with the genocide that is happening in Gaza.
The genocide that's happening in Gaza. So that goes into the classroom, because sure as shooting, there are teachers out there teaching that. And can you imagine what it would be like to be a Jewish child in that classroom, or an Israeli child? We have Israelis living in the United States.
And so, yes, we might talk about a two-sided story, but when in ethnic studies, we teach a two-sided story with a critical analysis of who benefits from that two-sided story, right? Who has the power in that two-sided story, right? And so we
Actually, in this case, Hamas does explicitly. Right, Kelly? Like, when you like, who benefits in the two-sided story? If you're mandated to have a two-sided story, the bad guy win. That, like, the people, it's not about the stronger or the weaker. The one with no principles, no morals, no limiting anything wins. They'll be like, so Mr. Hitler, what is your point of view? That's who benefits in the two-sided story of the Allies versus the Axis powers. And in this case, it's the same. Who benefits? Only Hamas does. Unless you are going to sit there and justify the actions of Hamas, which she's doing with, she's doing that, then there's no way that Israel benefits from that story. That they get a say also. Why wouldn't they? It's just weird.
engage with our students to develop that critical consciousness so that they can go out in the world and use that analysis on their own.
There it is again. So they can go out in the world and use it.
And then finally, ethnic studies critically examines and works to dismantle white supremacy of privileged groups' feelings about their ancestors' past, right? And that's a tactic. That's a very intentional tactic to.
This is where she says that and I didn't want the little kid's voice to be heard, but this is where she says that the opposition, we have said that kids have feelings, end up having feelings about their ancestors' past, not even about themselves, but about, if their ancestors are attacked. And she's calling it a tactic.
Focus on individuals rather than looking at things systemically.
And that's a problem. Let me go back a little bit.
Past, right? And that's a tactic. That's a very intentional tactic to focus on individuals rather than looking at things systemically.
And God forbid we focus on the individual child who feels like crap in the classroom. Aren't we supposed to have everyone feels included? Everyone feels safe. Children can't learn until they feel safe and included and have a sense of belongingness. We learned from Alexis the other day from Haverford, PA. Except for you. No, not so much you. That's what she's saying.
So that's just a little bit about those definitions. So the political landscape we're in right now, as you can imagine, and as many of you know, very much along with, as Jesse was talking about, the attacks are really intense. The attacks are intense for teachers. The attacks are intense for professional development providers, like many of us. We are coming under attack with lawsuits. We are being personally attacked. We are having death threats. Our students are in danger oftentimes, particularly right now, as you know, some of the horrific things that are happening with our Muslim students, our Palestinians.
What? Some of the horrific things. And then she refers to one horrible murder of a little boy by a guy who has mental problems. Like, he clearly is an old man. He clearly has a screw loose. He did something horrific and he said why he did it. And he's obviously like absolutely out of his mind crazy. One thing. And she says the things that are happening to our Muslim students. Meanwhile, I personally know Jewish students who have been bullied and threatened and so on. And there was a murder of a woman just the other day who was Jewish, and ironically worked closely with her local Muslim community to try. She's very social justice oriented, and she was stabbed to death outside her home. Very prominent in the community.
Deb, did you see the report 8 hours ago today about Manhattan Beach Unified School District, which it said from libs of TikTok. Is it okay if I read this?
Yes, please.
Okay. It says school makes Jewish students sign gag order after being attacked. Jewish middle schoolers at Manhattan Beach Unified School District were reportedly attacked by other students after Hamas attacks on Israel. Some students allegedly said, quote, "Revenge is beautiful," end quote, and, quote, "all Jews should be killed," end quote. And then it says here, the school investigated and concluded that it wasn't hate speech. The perpetrators received no punishment, and the school made the victims sign a gag order to not discuss the incident since the school doesn't want anyone discussing it. This is from libs of TikTok now, the whole thing. Definitely don't share this or tag them. So I'm sharing this. And then there's a couple pictures, including the no contact contract from Manhattan Beach Middle School District. So that just goes to show that the whole concept of hate speech, it's everything of this transformative agenda, everything that we see, like safe schools, safe places, safe person badge, hate speech. All this is like watching, a sheepdog herd sheep in the direction they want them to go. And so
there's something below that, Kelly. Scroll down and read what it says in the tweet below what you just read. It says, okay, but wait, there's more.
Just a few months ago, the ADL in California congratulated this school district on being a school with, quote, "no place for hate," end quote. Apparently, some forms of hate are actually allowed. Will the ADL condemn this? Will they offer support to the students affected? And I will say, for my part, I live in an area where a lot of the politicians are, they love to have those signs that says "no place for hate." I've had several neighbors, and one was a politician and had that big "no place for hate" sign. I'm still waiting for all these politicians to say something about what happened. And so that's when, again, so many things, it's just words to move people in the direction that they want them to go, to move the needle in their political conformity, because they do not want other viewpoints. They do not truly believe in liberty and freedom. They believe in their ideas, their way or the highway. And it's really interesting. Just one more thing I was going to say is that I was talking with a friend, and the friend said, you hear about these land acknowledgements, this stolen land. And the reality is that with the political ideology they're promoting, socialism, communist ideas, absolutely, that you don't own land in communist countries. They are in charge. They tell you what to do. They dictate everything. And it is concerning with regards to this ethnic studies, because these concepts and ideas and wholeness and wellness are absolutely being applied to our healthcare system as well. When you see comprehensive sexuality education, it says on, I'm trying to remember, I think it's SECUS, yes. Sex ed is a vehicle for social change, but they also say sex ed is a vehicle for racial justice. All of these groups, again, you look at the funding, you can look at their correlation to UNESCO, the World Health Organization, and so many different actions around the world. It's kind of like what happened with George Floyd. It was not just in the US. The push for gender ideology in schools is not just the US. It is a global movement impacting multiple countries. And who is funding it? Because it's not just people inside our country.
No question about it.
Yeah.
I want to play a little bit more of this, and then I might jump around to some because there's more, but I just want to make sure there's a few things I want to make sure we get through. I hope it's all right.
Students with a recent killing in Chicago of a Palestinian 6-year-old. So oftentimes, what these attacks are around is the conflation of teaching about Palestine as anti-Semitic.
And what else is it?
Right. And so critiquing the state of Israel does not equate anti-Semitism. And in fact,
it does. It does. They're critiquing the state of Israel. They're not criticizing the government of Israel, or they're not criticizing the military of Israel. They're criticizing the state of Israel. What they literally say is from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They call it an apartheid state. They want it eliminated. They want the state of Israel to cease to exist. I don't know what you call that. That's literally anti-Semitism. Jews are not allowed to live in Arab lands. It's very simple. There was an ethnic cleansing in 1948 of every single neighboring Arab country to the tune of 800,000 Jews kicked out. They're not there anymore. But we don't talk about that in ethnic studies. We don't talk about these people who are in Algeria and Tunisia and Egypt and Yemen. And I mean, the Yemeni Jews were thrown out into the desert, and Israel had to rescue them with their goats. Okay. Israel to this day is rescuing Jews from Ethiopia and Eritrea. These countries where Muslims predominate kick their Jews out or kill them, slaughter them, etc., just like they do with Christians. And there's a saying, first we come for the Saturday people, then we come for the Sunday people. This is how it's done. So with critiquing Israel is not about anti-Semitism is absolutely ridiculous. That's exactly what it is. It isn't anything else.
In fact, using anti-Semitism is actually used to hide and conceal the suffering of Palestinian people.
No, it's not, because the number one provider of aid to the people there, traditionally until Hamas came into power, were the Israelis.
I'm getting distracted by the chat, so I'm not going to look at that right now, but
at our minds and our bodies.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fatima. It makes me think about the
These
fact
four people
that
are talking.
Coalition, our work is decolonial.
There it is again.
Decolonial work has to include organizing, just like abolition has to include organizing, right? Not just theorizing, but organizing. I mean, we have to have a good analysis, but you have to be doing that work. And in order to push back on oppression, it really makes me also think about how we intersect with abolition in terms of what Ruth. Oftentimes, abolition gets thought of as like it's only about dismantling and abolishing, when in reality it's quite different. So for the coalition, our 99% is decolonizing ethnic studies, the inclusion of Palestine, the inclusion of queer and trans voices, CRT, BLM in schools. It's also
So, I mean, this goes on, and I think you guys get it. We could sit and listen to all of it, but the point is, Kelly, right, that these things are all connected. They're not
Right.
separate problems that you're working on as parents. When you are fighting back, you're not saying, oh, it's the ethnic, oh, it's the CRT, oh, it's the SEL, oh, it's DEI, oh, it's all part of the same program of destabilizing and dismantling no less than the United States and Western civilization as we know it, as we have known it. We're not talking about nipping at the edges, making small improvements, making things a little nicer for people who've had a rough time. She said it herself. This isn't about that. This isn't inclusive. This is decolonizing. This is about centering those pre-colonial cultures, pre-colonial ways of knowing. Well, that puts us back before cars and electricity and a whole range of other things that what ways of knowing did they have that were so superior? Without draft animals, the wheel was useless. The Aztecs put them on toys. They didn't have any other use for them.
She talks about community organizing, and that is clearly, an interesting point, because the very first thing I said, basically when Salinas Union High School District, right when ethnic studies and the teaching of critical race theory, when that was first addressed, was not in 2020 when George Floyd and all of those things were happening. It was actually noticed by the public and many of us. And we went to the first school board meeting, June 22nd, 2021. I know there's people out there that believe it was earlier during the George Floyd. They're wrong. It was in 2021. And what I noted in my speech, that was just something I was noticing over and over. I said, since when did public education become a political activist organization? Because that's what's being done. This seems like a ploy to just use the education system as a way to funnel government money in, put it out to the activist organizations that are their friendly political allies in arms, and then use the kids as the ones who are indoctrinated, then activated, and then they're community organized to then go out and do their bidding for them of this entire agenda. So when we follow the money and we look at the material that's being taught to the kids and we look at the byproduct, it's very interesting. I actually, today I had some time this morning, and I had started reading a book that was recommended to me years ago by a friend who's been a homeschool mentor to me. And she told me to read, and Deb, you've probably read it. You're probably familiar with it. It's John Taylor Gatto's Dumbing Us Down.
Oh yeah, I have a whole video series on it.
Oh.
If you guys are interested and you're not sure you want to read it, although I highly recommend it, I literally did a chapter by chapter read along, and each video is one of the sections.
Do it.
And I pulled out the sort of key points and the key things that I thought you needed to get out of there. And by the time you get to the end, your teeth will fall out of your head when you read what these educators were proposing in the 1920s, going up, and then in the 50s after that, and the things they said about our children and the purpose of education. If you don't get it by then, I can't help you.
I know. I honestly think, and now I'm actually really excited to go and watch that, because I think people around the country should be organizing their own communities and just having discussions with people in your community. It's good to be on social media and bring awareness, and it's good to be out there, but start a book club, read that book with some people in your neighborhood, and then watch Deb's program and subscribe to her subs and support her work, because she's doing all of this work at analyzing and bringing us all this material.
You're the one who did ethnic studies, girl. I
Well,
didn't like that's not
no,
me. I'm just sitting here looking
but
over your shoulder.
I know you've done a lot. And so I just think I'm excited now, because when I started reading, I'm taking lots of notes in the margins and underlining and exclamation points. I don't leave my books unmarked. And so now I'm excited to go back and watch that, because it's true, education, everything he's talking about is conformity, conformity, conformity. And that's what this is, but it's political conformity in every way. So
That's right.
what you feed
And
a
I really
child. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if we can get to the bottom of, or we can convince people that this money is coming from sources like China and like, the Arab world and places that are actually looking to destabilize us, looking to take us down a peg for whatever reasons, and a realignment of superpowers, just because they actually want to literally do away with us. It could be multiple reasons, but money is pouring into our education system. And so, yes, your tax dollars are still being taken and used for it. And that's already an affront. That's already theft when you consider the fraud that's being perpetrated just in the academics, just lying to you about your kids can read, everything's fine. I talked to a mother today who didn't find out till the kid is 17 years old that she reads at a first grade level. She was told all along, your daughter's fine, honors, this, that, the other. Total lie. So, there was an article I posted today on Facebook about grade inflation. I mean, these things, that's a fraud all by itself. Now, what you see all this coming into the district and taking up time away from the stuff that you guys are paying for, ostensibly, is paid for by other people, NGOs, foreign governments, God only knows what else. And it's displacing the learning time that was supposed to be given over to other things. And I, the way I described it today was that if I can't convince you that the alphabet soup is poison, at least remember that you paid for steak. You paid for steak. Why is your kid being fed a steady diet of alphabet soup? No steak, nowhere. You're not getting your money back. They don't even have a fork and knife. They just have a spoon. Only they don't get to eat it. It's being used to spoon feed them the alphabet soup. And then they come home and they're an honor student. Here's a sticker, Mom. You're a parent of an honor student. Meanwhile, you get to the end of, whatever grade, your kid can barely read, write, do math or anything else, doesn't know name a country other than America. And they can't do it.
Right.
And so, and that's the extreme, but I'm just saying that what are we paying for?
Right. Well, and I know so many parents, it's not a bad thing, but so many parents that are totally focused on the food and nutrition of their children. Good thing. But then they start, obviously they're like, is it locally sourced? Is it organic? Is it farm to table? What kind of farm? I mean, some people get really specific with all of it, and where they're buying it from and all of those things.
Right.
But we need to be just as, if not more, aware of not just farm to table, but we're talking about who is motivating the development of curriculum. And let's look into them a little bit. Who are these activists? Do they have any criminal record? Do have what groups are here? What funding is here? I've made a friend recently who has been explaining to me more, because the funding side is not necessarily an examination of everything, what I've always focused in on. But those who know how to examine funding know that money always tells a tale. And
That's right.
we have to be looking into it. And I was reading, there's this article that the California Policy Center had published, and the title says California's K-12 spending exceeds $20,000 per pupil. And this was an article from March 3rd of 2020. So again, it's kind of like everything in California. we are spending so much, we are taxed so high, and yet we have record homelessness. Our gas prices are absolutely ridiculous. You know, we don't have quality education. We're the lowest on the one of the lowest as far as the quality of our education system. Our DMV, I didn't always know this, but I learned that in other states, you can go in and out of a DMV type office in 30 minutes sometimes. That is not the case here. Here you have to usually you're sitting all day long. I know a family, and the father went in with the child who was getting a license, and the child waited and waited and waited with the parent, and then actually needed to go to a class, left to go to their class, went through the whole long couple hours of class, drove back, and still waited and waited and waited. That's our DMV. Nothing that I've seen that's government run is run well. And the interesting thing is that, we're being moved in the direction of more government socialized medicine as well, especially in the school system. So with all those things, you have division and strife, and tension breeds control and conformity. And those are not good
100%.
things.
100%. Well, I hope that we've, kind of made our point. I mean, it's hard to know. There, like I said, the video even that I have could go on and on. And as long as you guys take away from this that all these different alphabet little groups and ideas are connected. They're all part of the same project. It's all part of this liberation decolonization project. Decolonization equals genocide. It just does. It eventually gets there. And we've got to get it out of our schools or prevent it from coming in. So when you start to see things like what I showed you from Cherry Hill of this, culturally relevant, blah, 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 that's the precursor. That's their little test shot to see what you do. And if you don't challenge it and you don't jump right on top of it and say, hell no, absolutely not. You go back to the basics and the reading and the writing and the math and the science, and we don't want any critical theory. Zero. Critical theory, it has no place in the United States of America K through 12 system. It's something you could maybe talk about and teach in college and have a discussion if you want. But to teach it to impressionable young students who don't know anything about the world and aren't going to be presented with alternate viewpoints or the history of anything as real, is like, this is what you need to do, and this is your critical consciousness needs to be awakened, is to do no less than to teach them Marxist ideology in American taxpayer-funded schools when our constitutional rights are supposed to protect us from that sort of indoctrination. They actually, in California, you have a statute that explicitly prohibits the teaching of communism in the schools. Not teaching about it, but teaching it. And in fact, the California schools, last time I checked, don't teach anything about it. They don't teach
They really don't.
anything. They don't know about Mao. They don't know about Stalin. They don't know about Pol Pot. They don't know about any of it. They don't know who Alexander Solzhenitsyn is, even in 12th grade. They wouldn't have the first clue who he is. So that's a problem when you've completely red-washed the curriculum right out of there. And instead you bring in this stuff and call it, and say, this isn't about having every viewpoint. In fact, we're going to teach kids who benefits from a two-side story. So they're not even interested in two sides anymore, only their side.
Right. Hey, Deb, one of the things I wanted to mention, because I remember seeing this story, this just came out May 4th of this year. The website it's from is jewishjournal.com.
Okay.
And so just for anybody that's wondering about this liberated model of curriculum or this, the concerns of anti-Semitism, on this article written by Aaron Bandler, it says Santa Ana School Board passes anti-Israel ethnic studies courses. The Santa Ana Unified School District Board of Education approved 2 ethnic studies courses that Jewish groups say contain anti-Israel bias. And so it's this entire article. It says the course titled Ethnic Studies World Geography. So that's what the course was titled.
Is this it?
Yes, that's it. Wait,
Okay.
no.
Oh.
Santa Ana School Board passes anti-Israel ethnic studies from May 4th.
Oh, okay. So
But
it's
that is current. In Orange County, so again, we're looking at political agendas here. We have Orange County, which has been one of the conservative strongholds for a long time in California. You've got blue all around, and Orange County has by and large been conservative and very red. So it's not a surprise that the school system, led by the California government, is encouraging this in one of the most conservative regions.
wow.
I find that not so ironic, in my personal opinion. But
yeah, I mean, it's a massive wave of ethnic cleansing that saw the forced removal of approximately 300,000 Palestinians from the newly conquered territory. First of all, this is just so like the occupation of the West Bank. The West Bank is not occupied. There are little tiny pockets of it where the Israeli military and police have some control. There are giant swaths of it that are controlled by the Palestinian Authority. There are little bitty pockets that are like completely uncontrolled, like contested. Nobody controls it. Jerusalem's split. What are they talking about? What are they even talking? Like, they're not even presenting actual real information. It's like there are people walking around who don't realize that Israel doesn't occupy Gaza.
right.
And hasn't since 2005. The ethnic cleansing was the IDF physical removal of Jews from Gaza. They went in and pried people away out of their homes, their businesses, their farms, etc. They had to leave it all behind and go to like who knows where. These are Jews. They dug up the graves of their ancestors and had to move entire cemeteries full of graves out of Gaza and hand it over to the newly elected government, which was Hamas. And actually, 44% voted for Hamas, 41% voted for Fatah, which is basically the PLO. So we have a total of 85% of the people in Gaza voted for what is essentially a terrorist organization. They all share power in the parliament. But, we can't talk about that. We're going to just talk about this stuff because this, is what matters. Yes, I'm biased. I'm biased because I know the facts.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when the Salinas curriculum was analyzed by someone in the community, this person noted that there's a graphic in the curriculum and a quote attributed to someone, and it's completely entirely false. And so accuracy, I'm not really sure that's big on the list, but politicizing students, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a graphic that I have. I'm gonna try to get it over to the computer so I can show it, because this is the one I was talking about earlier, but it's really important for people to understand what the kids are not learning because they don't see this stuff. And it is this graphic that shows where, because you're going to hear the term ethnic cleansing a whole lot more than you've already heard it. And so you might as well see what real ethnic cleansing looks like. These are Muslim countries. These are all Muslim countries. This is how many Jews were forcibly expelled from each. And that's just in 1948. That's not during pogroms and different things along the way as well. And we're not even counting Jews that had to be, after the Holocaust, Jews from places like the Soviet Union, Jews from Ethiopia and Eritrea, which are right down here. We're not even counting them. We're just counting these countries. And there's little teeny tiny Israel. That was the only place that would take them. It's not like the United States was going, oh, come on over here, you 800,000 people that have no homes, nowhere to go, only speak these languages. They didn't speak Hebrew. I mean, they spoke it enough to be religious, but their first language was Arabic. This is why you go to Israel and you'll see, you won't be able to tell the difference. Half the time people are like, they can't tell the difference. They think everyone looks like me. The kids in these classes in California being taught about Palestine think that you see a brown face, it must be Palestinian, and you see a white face and it must be Jewish. There are faces in Israel. First of all, they're faces of Hamas. They could be Russian. They look like they're from, Chechnya. And then there are faces in Israel that look exactly like Arabs because they are Arabs. They're Mizrahi Jews. So I just wanted to share that because in case you keep hearing this and you're wondering, they got kicked out of their homes.
Well, Deb,
so
thank you.
This has been very helpful. Thank you. Before we go, one last little plug for my new endeavor that I've worked on for, quite a while. And I would appreciate it if you guys would, consider joining my new community that is over at Discord. It's basically what you do is you join and it gives you access to either link your existing Discord or join Discord, and you will have access to the different feeds over there where I put links and I put all these videos get shared up there. So you won't miss a notification ever again. YouTube loves to do that. Screw up the notifications. They'll all be in one place and you can just scroll back and see what you missed. I do have, for members at Logician level and above, I have resources like recordings of live streams that I will do. I do 2 live streams a week, Monday and Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. The Monday one is about homeschooling. The Friday one is about general education policy and culture in America. And they will be live at those times, but I will record each of them and put the recordings in a hidden place on YouTube and then link them, give you the links in the private resource guide, as well as resources for homeschooling. I also offer those members discounts on tutoring and consulting and all that sort of stuff. You can promote your own work there too. So it's a cool new community that I've built using Discord underneath the Woke Screen banner that Kieran White owns. And I would love to see you guys over there. Basically what I'm trying to do is take what I had at Locals, but move it over to where I have even more protection as far as freedom of speech, more functionality, more stability for live streams. I can have guests. I can show screens. We can have community calls on Tuesday and Thursday at 1. I have community calls where we just sit and chat and shoot the breeze. You can ask me any questions that you want. And I'm trying to build community around people like us watching this show right now, participating in the show, who want to, share ideas and start working on this, making it better. One of the things that I say in my descriptions down here, I try to get cute with my classical descriptions, but these 2 levels are based on your level of interest in participating and making things better. That's why you would want to be part of that community. And then the annual has private access to me and things like that. But that's my little plug. And at a minimum, if you're not a member yet, or not a member, a subscriber to this channel, which costs you nothing, you just click a button. I would greatly appreciate it. Please also like and share this broadcast. Go visit Kelly on Twitter. Also, she has a podcast herself, which is A Time to Stand. There are recordings there that are very important for you to listen to. And I think that's about it. Anything else to add, Kelly?
Oh, we've covered so much. I'm glad. That was good. Thanks, Deb.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. I know it's a lot, you guys, to swallow, but it's really important. You've got to keep this junk out of your school. So have a good evening and we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.